Good morning, everybody. I'd like to hand across to His Excellency Allan McKinnon, the Australian Ambassador to the Kingdom of Thailand, to provide the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Brenton, and I'd like to welcome Brendan. Thanks very much for that introduction. His Excellency, the New Zealand Chargé d'Affaires, James Andersen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome you all to this ANZAC Day commemorative service. This year, obviously, because of COVID, again, the ANZAC Day services traditionally held in locations across Australia, New Zealand, and right across broad patches of the rest of the world cannot be held. But the importance of ANZAC Day is such that wherever Australians and New Zealanders are, we still pause, we reflect, and we remember those New Zealand and Australian servicemen and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice and who suffered so much. It was around 4:30 a.m. on the 25th of April 1915 that the first soldiers of the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, the first ANZACs, landed in Ari Burnu region on the Gallipoli Peninsula. And by the end of that day, over 16,000 men had surged ashore and more than 2,000 were dead or injured. The bravery and sacrifice of these men, their conduct on that day and throughout the subsequent months of bitter fighting on the shores of Gallipoli has set them apart in our nation's consciousness. The Gallipoli campaign might have been a military failure, but it meant so much to our young nations. After Gallipoli, New Zealand and Australia had a greater confidence in their own worth as independent nations and in the contributions they could make to world affairs. And these ANZAC soldiers exemplified endurance, determination and courage under fire, as well as a sense of mateship, qualities that would later be known as the ANZAC spirit. Their courage, initiative, loyalty and selflessness has come to symbolise the best of both countries. ANZAC Day commemorations began in 1916 as a way of honouring those who died at Gallipoli the year before. And in modern times, ANZAC Day has come to symbolise all men and women who serve in Australia and New Zealand's armed forces, all those who fight and make sacrifices for their country, all those who continue to uphold those ANZAC values. The men and women of our Navy, Army and Air Force have continued to serve us with pride and remain true to the courage, dedication and loyalty demonstrated by the ANZACs of Gallipoli in 1915. So ANZAC Day is an important day for the Australian and New Zealand community in Thailand as well. Even though for the second year running, we cannot be at Hellfire Pass at Kanchanaburi to pay our respects, we can still reflect on the sacrifice of those who have served, those who continue to serve, and those who will serve in the future. We demonstrate our gratitude by remembering their sacrifice and by honouring the values they first fought for over 100 years ago and continue to fight for today. This is the payment we make against a debt we can never fully repay, lest we forget.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would now like to invite Scott Chemis, a Vietnam vet, past president of the Australian Thai Chamber of Commerce and a long-term resident of Thailand, to provide some remarks on behalf of the New Zealand and Australian expatriate community in Thailand on ANZAC Day.
Thank you, Brenton. Ambassador, Chargé d'Affaires. Good morning to all on this special ANZAC Day event. And thank you again to Auscham for the second year in a row for organising this ability for us to come together. As you know, ANZAC Day in Thailand has always been a very special given the tragic events that took place here so long ago. The dawn service at Hellfire Pass, followed by the service at the cemetery, has always been very well attended, given that at the cemetery a number of nations are involved who show their respects. Hellfire Pass is, of course, the special place to Australians and New Zealanders, hence the dawn service. Hopefully we can return to the pass next year to show our respects and gratitude to those who gave so much to preserve our way of life. For those, if you haven't seen it yet, very much thanks to to Brandon and John Hancock for doing a special on the history of the development of the Hellfire Pass Memorial and the museum. It's like a lot of things in life, if it wasn't for 2 or 3 particular dedicated individuals, I mean, Ken Bradley, John Hancock, David Wright, and so forth, then we wouldn't have the memorial and the museum as we have it today. So very important to preserve the history for how these things came about. We have in the past been honoured by the attendance of Australian prisoners of war, especially a few that were prisoners of war at that place at that time. How can we forget the courage of Neil McPherson, Harold Martin and Snowy Fairclough in making the efforts to pay their respects to their past comrades? It's highly unlikely that we'll see any of the past prisoners of war back at Hellfire Pass in the future. So it's critical that we find ways of preserving their memory and providing support. The pass has been well honoured by our Governor General, Prime Ministers and senior officials in the past. We'd also like to thank particularly the Thai government and the Thai armed forces for their support, particularly for the museum and the memorial, and their support and efforts on ANZAC Day itself. There are very few of the men and women from the past world wars that are left in our presence. And it's critical that we in generations yet to come do not diminish our commitment to remember their sacrifices, the ideas that gave them so much courage and devotion, lest we forget.
Thank you very much, Lee. I'd now like to ask everybody to stand for the Australian, New Zealand and Thai anthems.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We
Thank you very much, everybody. I'd now like to ask you to light your candles in preparation. We shall hear the last post, followed by 1 minute silence, and then we'll hear from Steve Fomiati, the Australian Defence Attaché to the Kingdom of Thailand, who will recite the Ode of Remembrance. If I could ask you to light your candles and stand again. Thank you very much.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. Thank you very much, everyone. I'd now like to call on His Excellency James Andersen, the Chargé d'Affaires of New Zealand to the Kingdom of Thailand, to provide some closing remarks.
Thank you, Brenton. His Excellency Allan McKinnon, Australian Ambassador to Thailand, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to you all. It's my pleasure to join our Australian and New Zealand communities for this commemoration on a significant day for both our countries, ANZAC Day 2021. I would like to close today's ceremony with a recitation in Māori and English. Ko ngā wairua o mātou hoi atoa, moi mai rā I moenga roa, e kore e mātou, e ware tia, moi mai rā I te rangimārie e. To the spirits of the brave soldiers, sleep peacefully. We will never forget. Rest in peace.
Thank you, everybody, for attending today. That brings us to the close of this remembrance service. I'd like to thank you for your attendance. I guess it's reflective of the fact that we live where they fell, lest we forget. Thank you.